Okay, 8th grade, this is going to be one of our last new topics for the year, and it's going to be a preview of what you're going to need to know next year for algebra. So we're going to start talking about the Pythagorean theorem. When we talk about the Pythagorean theorem, it only deals with triangles, and it's a certain type of triangles. It's only when we're dealing with right triangles. So make sure you go ahead and fill that in your notes. There's a special formula that we're going to use every single day when we talk about Pythagorean theorem. The formula is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So you're probably wondering, what in the world does this mean? So you'll notice on your paper, you have a little triangle. And what I need you to do first is I need you to label the legs or the sides of the triangle. So I need you to label the bottom side A, it's a leg. I need you to label the side going up and down B, and that's a leg as well. And C, you'll notice of your triangle, this looks like it's your longest side. In your formula, C will always be your longest side or your hypotenuse. That's what we call it. And since we're dealing with a right triangle, I can put a little right angle here. You will always know C, your longest side, is directly across from your right angle. So now you're probably wondering why there's these little A, B, and C inside the triangle. This represents the angles. So angle A is directly across from leg A or side A. Angle B is directly across from leg B or side B. And angle C is directly across from side C. So the main things you need to know is A and B are the legs of the triangle. C will always be the hypotenuse. Which is the longest side. And it's always across from the right angle. Okay, so this formula is something that we're going to get really comfortable using. Let's go ahead and look at our first example. We want to determine the length of the hypotenuse for the right triangle. I can already see my right angles here, and that angle is labeled C, which shows that side C is here, which is already labeled. So remember, if you want to determine the length of your hypotenuse, I know my formula is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Remember this squared, it's an exponent. It means it's being multiplied by itself 2 times. Okay? So now I got to substitute or fill into my formula. Except the question is, I don't know, it doesn't tell me is 8a or b and a 6a or b. So I have to use the angles that label my triangle. Since angle A is right here, that's the angle. My side, remember, is directly across from it. So you have to think, is that 6 or is that 8? It would actually be 8. So I know that A equals 8. If I look at side B, here's my angle. I'm going to go directly across from it, and B equals 6. So now I'm going to substitute these numbers into my formula. So my A is 8, so I have 8 squared, plus my B is 6 squared, equals, do I know what my C is? I don't, so I'm going to leave it as C squared. So now I know 8 squared. 8 squared again is 8 times 8, which gives us 64. 6 squared is 6 times 6, which gives us 36. And that's still equal to c squared, or some number multiplied by itself 2 times. So now I'm going to go ahead and simplify. 64 plus 36 gives me 100 equals c squared. So now I have to think to myself, what number multiplied by itself 2 times gives me 100? That number would be 10. 10 would be equal to c. Something else, I'm going to take this and I want to show you something else. And we'll kind of go through it together when I'm back on Tuesday. So when you have 100, 100 equals c squared. The opposite of squaring something is taking the square root. So if I take the square root of one side, I have to take the square root of the other side. And that was not a square root. Symbol, let me erase this line. So this squared and the square root cancels each other out. So I'm just left with c equals, and the square root of 100 is 10. Okay, our next example, we're going to determine the length of the hypotenuse of a right triangle. Again, what's the formula for a right triangle? You should start to know this already. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. I want you to try to go ahead and label which side is A, this is my angle A, and label which side is B. You notice C is already labeled. So if angle A is here, length A or leg A would be there, so I would have 7 squared. Notice how instead of writing A equals 7, I just went ahead and I plugged it in. If I have B here, angle B, remember side B is directly across from it. So I have B equals 3. So I can do 7 squared plus 3 squared equals c squared. Again, 7 squared is 7 times 7. 3 squared equals 3 times 3. Be prepared on Monday, you're probably going to have a Kahoot squaring numbers. So 7 times 7 gives me 49, and 3 times 3 gives me 9. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring my work over here. 7 squared is 49, plus 3 squared, which is 9, gives us c squared. When I simplify 49 plus 9, I get 58 equals c squared. If you were to do the square root of c, or of c squared and of 58, you're going to get a decimal. So that means that 58 is not a perfect square. Next week, we're going to actually go ahead and figure out what numbers it would be between. Today, what I want you to do is I just want you to leave your answer 58 equals c squared. That's how I want you to leave your answer for today. I do not want you to give me the decimal version. I want you to leave it today as c squared equals 58. Next week, we're going to worry about putting it in a simpler form. Okay, so what you're going to end up doing for class today is you need to complete the rest of this packet where you're solving for c. Again, that's the hypotenuse or the longest side. That always is this part of your Pythagorean theorem. After that, you have a perfect square worksheet where you're going to take the perfect square of numbers, and you can use your calculator. And lastly, you're going to have an exit ticket. You need to make sure you manage your time. because all of this should be able to get done within this class period. There's no reason that any one of these 3 things should become homework. If they become homework and you have to give them to me on Monday, that tells me that you weren't really getting your work done this period. So all 3 of these things should be done before you leave that door.